Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
There are people out there all across the country pushing boundaries to grow the game of golf. Like champion speed golfer Lauren Cupp, who plays faster than anyone else. And Will Lowry, whose work in the golf community inspires more kids to get into the game. As a champion partner of the Masters, Bank of America supports everyone determined to find out what's possible. In golf and in life. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America. Bank of America N.A. member FDIC, copyright 2025, Bank of America Corporation, all rights reserved.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
It's time for basketball, and Uber Eats is dropping deals on game day favorites to keep you locked in on the action. Like when you're craving a buzzer beater, but also buffalo wings. Or when an upset makes you want to ugly cry into a pizza. And right now, Uber Eats has game day deals from Burger King, Buffalo Wild Wings, KFC, and hundreds more local favorites. So you can keep your eyes on the ball and your hands on a burger. Order now, only on Uber Eats. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, Duke fans, Firehose Week continues with episode 716 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. Jason Evans, Donald Wine, and I will not do any of the preamble kind of chit-chat kind of stuff. We're going to dive right in. We are joined by a frequent guest on this podcast, Jordan Brenner, a writer for The Athletic of the New York Times, also the host of the Underdogs podcast on the DraftKings Sports Network. Hey, Jordan, my first thing is, so I happen to check in Vegas. Duke is apparently a 5.5 point favorite over Houston in Vegas. All the analytics, all the metrics people will say to you, that is too big a line. Like maybe 2 points at the most should be this line. As an underdog expert, why the hell is Houston 5.5 points? Why is Duke favored by 5.5 over Houston?
I think my guess would be that you're attracting so much public money at this point that people want to bet on Duke. People like to bet on Duke. I haven't looked yet at what sharp money has done, if at all. Normally the public wouldn't move the line as much as sharp money would, but it could just be that the books are taking so much Duke money that this is where they set it. I'm with you. 5.5 felt really high. I tried to guess the lines for the 2 Final Four games before they came out, and I had Duke by 3.5 and Florida by 1.5, so I was close, but 5.5 surprised me.
Yeah, I believe Florida's at 2.5.
Yep.
2.5.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Closer there,
yeah. Look, hey, we haven't spoken to you since Duke made it to the Final Four. Let's start our conversation with how impressed were you with the weekend, the victory over Arizona and the victory over Alabama?
Oh, so impressed. I mean, how could you not be? And I was fortunate enough to be courtside in Newark and really getting a great look at the team and what they were doing and what there was being countered against them. And the thing that really stands out right now, and it'll be tested in a way it hasn't been yet, but whenever things are tough now, this team can get a bucket. They're playing offense at such a high level right now that it's like, okay, they cut it. Like normally it's like great teams in the past, you're like, all right, we're up 5. We got to get a stop here. We're going to get a stop. Here it's like they cut it to 7. They cut it to 5. All right, we're going to run this set that we execute perfectly, and it's going to set up a lob to Malawach, or, it's going to generate an open 3 and we're going to knock it down. Like this is a historically great offensive team at this point. And
by the way, hey, really quick.
Yeah.
Remember earlier in the year when they were number 1 on defense? We were all like,
yes,
John Shire's built a team on defense. What the hell happened?
And I remember him saying early in the season, like, that he felt it was like very prescient. Like he said, our defense is ahead of our offense right now. I still think we can get to another gear, another level. We have to play faster. He said, I think we can get to another gear, and everything he sort of alluded to has happened. Like, so if you're a Duke fan and you're looking for optimism against Houston, yes, they will be challenged in a way they haven't yet by a defense. But I don't think Houston will. There's a limit to how many points they can score, and I kind of feel like this team can just get buckets against anyone.
Before we go straight into Duke specifically, let's look at this Final Four. Of course, it's the first time since 2008 that all 4 1 seeds make it to the Final Four. That Final Four was also in San Antonio. But why do you think that is? I mean, again, you host the Underdogs podcast where you focus in on the underdog, but why is it that this, in your mind, that this became an all chalk Final Four?
So I have a column coming out in The Athletic, I think on Friday, to plug it. And it's all about the lack of upsets in this year's tournament. And it started in the first round with chalk and it didn't relent. So you have to be careful drawing conclusions from a 1-year sample, but it's hard not to think that the combination of NIL and the transfer portal has made it virtually impossible for mid-majors to keep their best players. And you would think that power teams are only going to become more efficient in the spending, the raising of the money, the spending of the money, the identification and recruitment of the talent from lower level schools. And so if you go back to last year's tournament, look at some of the big teams that pulled off upsets. Oakland, where did Trey Townsend go? Arizona. Yale, where'd Danny Wolf go? Michigan. James Madison. Why am I blanking on his name at Louisville?
James, not Edward. God damn it. He went to Louisville. I know who you're talking about. He was Terrence Edwards. Terrence Edwards.
Terrence Edwards Jr. Yes. Mm-hmm. So you're talking of 3 of the biggest first round upsets last year. And instead of being able to build on, like we've seen that in the past, right? Like Steph Curry comes back, or, instead of being able to build on that, those guys go elsewhere, and then they're prime players on really good teams. So it's like even more of a minor league feeder system. So the difference between the haves and have-nots is arguably going to be greater than we've ever seen. Now, why that also then create a greater difference between the top teams in power conferences and the others, that I don't know. We just happen to have 4 historically good teams here. I mean, they're the top 4 teams in KenPom. They're both in the top 10 on offense and defense on KenPom. They're 4 historically good teams on like their ratings would be number 1 or number 2 most years. And it's also why 3 of these 4 teams are going to lose in a year where they probably would all be the national championship favorite in other years. So like we always talk about, there's going to have to be a level of understanding for fans of the 3 teams that lose that like, hey, we had a great season. This was an amazing ride. We just ran into another really, really great team. Because how can you, if you're a Duke fan, how can you fault Houston, Arizona, or Auburn for also thinking this is their year, like we've talked about?
Now let's look into this particular game against Houston. And I think we've asked you this a few times during the postseason, but I'll ask you again. And I know with Duke's defense, switching of matchups between players is not really a thing. But if you're looking at whether it's Duke's offense versus Houston's defense, vice versa, is there a facet of this game that you think would be fascinating for fans to key in on this weekend?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, I think that Duke's willingness to adjust quickly on defense is important. So, again, being courtside, you could see that early in the game, Duke was using some drop coverage, some harder hedges, and as soon as it was Chero who came out and hit 2 threes with Malawak off, as soon as that happened, you saw Shire put up 5, and immediately they went to a switching defense, and that was, to me, that determined the game. The ability to make that adjustment quickly and then effectively. And I thought we hadn't seen them switch 1 through 5 in a little while, and I thought Malawak in particular did a really great job when he was on guards. So that's the first thing, especially Houston, terrific 3-point shooting team, not nearly as efficient inside the arc. So I know Duke still wants to protect his paint. They don't want to get spread out too much, but I'm interested to see whether they open up switching or again, try a deep drop first and then switch. Also fascinated by Malik Brown because Shire actually, I forget which press, it was, I don't remember if it was right after the game or the next day, probably right after the game, alluded to that he seemed to think that the extra week would be meaningful. He wasn't speaking like someone who only planned to use Malik in the same role as this past weekend. It sounded less like, oh, this was an emergency this weekend. It sounded like there was more optimism in his voice about like what another week of strengthening and sort of stability could do. And if you get a Malik Brown who can then give you maybe some extended minutes as matchups dictate, and that's a game changer.
It's funny you mentioned John Shire. The next question that I had was one that I don't know that we've really asked on this show before, but it's the Final Four. And you have John Shire, obviously, in his 3rd year as head coach, first Final Four. He's going up against Kelvin Sampson, who has been around. This is his 3rd Final Four, his 36th year of coaching. How do you feel the coaching tit for tat will go between these two coaches? Because they have, at times, they have far different tendencies, but it's also like old school versus new school sometimes. How do you think that is going to look like on Saturday?
I mean, I don't know. I think they'll both be really well prepared. They both look really well prepared last weekend. I think at this point, you don't see a lot of bad coaches in the Final Four. These teams at this point, they're well-oiled machines, right? Like it's much more going to come down to execution than some sort of like, oh, he pulled out this crazy wrinkle that we never, you know what I mean? Like they'll have these guys prepared. They've got 5 days or more. Duke's had a week to scout. Like they'll be ready. I don't give anyone an advantage. And honestly, especially watching Duke up close, like they're really well coached. They are really, really well prepared and well coached. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, you're biased. You're friends with John Shire. You're biased.
I may be biased. Let me tell you what I get from people who don't know him. He's a really effing good coach, and like that, some of the stuff they run, like again, this is good basketball and really good basketball.
All right, hey, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, I'm going to ask Jordan, who's the one Duke player? Who is the one player on Duke who is key to them getting a victory against Houston? That's question when we come back.
All right, Duke fans, the finals for March Mania are here. And the only thing for sure is, it's the last time to bet on college basketball this season. Get in on all the action, expected and unexpected, with DraftKings Sportsbook.
That's right, Donald, with live betting, exclusive content, promos, parlays. DraftKings is the ultimate college basketball destination for March. And if it's your first time using DraftKings, you can get something special. $5 in bets for $150 in bonus bets instantly. It is a great deal as we close out the season.
Bet the unexpected with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code DUKEBB. That's code DUKEBB for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Uh-oh. The last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
Lowe's knows member-only doorbuster deals make SpringFest savings even better. Right now, rewards members can get 3 19.3-ounce Bonnie Plants vegetables and herbs for just $10. Plus, save $50 on a Charbroil Performance Series 4-burner grill, now $149. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 4/7, excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Selection varies by location, subject to change while supplies last. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms.
Business taxes. We're stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on turbotax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live full service.
All right, back from the commercial break, Donald and Jason, joined again by Jordan Brenner, a frequent guest of ours, host of the Underdogs podcast on DraftKings and a writer for The Athletic, who just told us he's going to have an article about the Scratch NCAA tournament coming out in The Athletic on Friday. So be on the lookout for that. Hey, Jordan, I want to, you were in the press area. You were able to hobnob with both the media and with the team after Duke defeated Alabama and made it to the Final Four. Give me a little bit of the scene. Give me a little bit of, what you observed there. Pretty special, pretty tight Duke team, isn't it?
Yeah, it was super interesting. I mean, the scene was very, first of all, like the scene for us media geeks, Jason, it was really interesting watching, compared it to the first, I think, regional final I ever covered was 2006 when George Mason came out of DC. And just looking at the change of the outlets that are covering these things, the way, legacy media has sadly shrunk and the economics of the situation.
Do you know they have podcasts covering teams now? What is that?
It's crazy.
Who would do that?
But just the number of, just the lack of big publications that were there and the number of those seats that then went to Bama fan-sided something and this fan and that, it's an interesting dynamic. I saw some national reporters, some people I've been friends with for a while, but it's a different vibe. And even if you watch the press conferences, some of the people asking the questions are I'm sorry, what outlet was that again? Charcoalbrick.com. Where are you? I don't know where I came up with that one. Cool part was, when you got a press pass, you could be on the floor after the game, especially for the net cutting ceremony, which was very neat. Shout out to Ken Jeong, who was taking photos with everybody. The one thing that seems interesting about this team is the families are super, they seem really tight and into it. Obviously the Knipples and the Flags seem to get the most airtime. It's obviously they're all former players, right? So I think there's a certain vibe that carries with them. They're not just they know the game. They're ballers. They love the sport, right? And it's not just that's my kid. It's also I'm very comfortable in a basketball situation. But it's fun to watch them. Watch them interact. It just seems like a tight crew that genuinely likes spending time together. And it was fun to see that sort of family atmosphere spill onto the court after the game.
I was just going to ask about the families because, we've seen some sets of parents that are tight, right? Maybe one player's family is tight with another, but we don't have the motherhood and the fatherhood and that sort of thing, which has been very fun as a fan to watch. And again, it kind of permeates is almost like the team itself and their togetherness has kind of permeated outside of the walls of Cameron. How is that different from previous years where I mean, there's probably some tight teams, but like you've never seen it feel like on full display like it has been.
Yeah, I don't want to pretend to be close enough to really know what previous dynamics have been. Like I don't have those kind of relationships or that intimate knowledge, but it's more that this just kind of from afar stands out. It just seemed like a particularly outgoing, friendly, celebratory close group, which is interesting in this era because you would think that with NIL, with the ability to bolt at any moment, it would make establishing chemistry tougher, not just among the players, but among the families. Because think of all the things that you could be jealous about now. It's not just playing time. It's how much money is so-and-so getting? What opportunities are there? What does next year look like? Who's coming in? Who's coming out? It's like, in general, college basketball feels less like a family and less like a actual university thing.
And more like a business.
Yeah. So like you don't see like families of NBA players like in that sort of environment. So, I think I think you could probably conclude that it is a testament just to what they've created with this group that it's spilling into the families.
Looking at Houston, obviously a great team. We've talked a little bit with people about their offense and especially their defense and how great it's been. Is there one player, and I know they kind of operate a similar style of having guys that are able to switch 1 through 5, but is there one guy on Houston that you feel is the X factor for them? The guy that kind of may not be the best, the top option, but is one that people need to look out for?
They are a team. They are very much a team. So I don't think they're going to be relying on what. It's not like you can like going to Arizona where like, oh well, cut off Caleb Love and the rest. Meanwhile, they didn't, and they still beat them badly. But like, I'm actually most interested, I think, in how they use Juwan Roberts. Only in that I've seen you saw it with Norchad Omier, for instance, right in the Baylor game, and certain other things. I think teams think that one of the few areas they might be able to exploit in this Duke defense is forcing Malawach to guard in the post. He's still kind of skinny, obviously. Against like a really physical guy like Omier or Roberts,
Juwan Roberts,
I think teams will try to go at him and score that way and or get him in foul trouble. Now, it's a little bit of fool's gold because if you're into analytics, and Duke certainly is, and actually all those programs in Newark were, that there's a reason why the post-up has largely disappeared from the NBA. It's analytically not a particularly efficient play. So in some ways, Duke might say, fine, go at him. If you can score 7 times in a row, then maybe we'll adjust. But like, I don't think you're going to see Duke sending help into the post. And so maybe Roberts gets 2 here and 2 there and 2 here and 2 there. But like, those are every basket he gets on a post up is a 3-point shot they're not taking. They're obviously second best in the nation in 3-point shooting, just a rounded down 40%. So I would watch that.
By the way, they don't shoot a lot of threes. That's one of the things. This is not Alabama, hoisting 50. They're going to shoot 18 to 20.
And that's the other thing that I would get into, right? Is like, if the game dictates that they need to increase their variance and take more threes, are they able to increase the frequency without hurting the efficiency? A lot of teams can't do that, and a lot of teams then you find out the reason why the efficiency is so good is because they're only taking really, really good threes. I don't know. The other thing that you'll definitely hear a lot about in the coming days are smaller guards, particularly LJ Cryer against Duke. You saw what Duke's length on the perimeter was able to do to Sears. Look, Emmanuel Sharp is physically built, but he's 6'3".
Yeah.
So there's length there, right? Uzan 6'4", and obviously Cryer 6'1". Proctor's 6'6", James is 6'6", and again, I think Caleb Foster has rediscovered a role on this team as well, and that length matters.
Jordan, we're almost done, but I want to put the question to you. I tease this. Who do you think is the most important player for Duke? You kind of, to some extent, you sort of hinted that you think maybe Juwan Roberts is the most important player for Houston. But who's the Duke guy that you're like, this is the player who needs to perform for the Blue Devils to win the game?
So I think there are certain other guys who might be more bellwethers. I think Proctor is in particular, but I'm going to go out on a real limb here. And actually, the guy who needs to really have a great game is Cooper Fleck. I know. It's crazy. But here's the thing. We saw against Alabama that Duke can win and win decisively when he's not at his best. I think this situation, if you had to ask me what the one thing that the Houston defense will dictate is, it's the ability to make plays maybe late in the clock. If they're going to if this offense isn't going to run quite as efficiently and be able to run its stuff quite as well, and cutters will get bumped and maybe they'll have fewer then you're going to need someone who can make a play one-on-one. And that's Cooper Fleck. So also, they don't necessarily have a natural matchup for him. I guess Francis to a certain extent, and maybe Tugler. But
Tugler's an incredible defender. Oh man, Tugler against Flagg is going to be one of the best matchups of the year.
Yep. But I still do like what Cooper can do on the perimeter in that matchup a little bit.
Well, and Tugler gets in foul trouble. Right. Tugler, he'll put you at the line. He'll be limited by fouls. So, Tugler versus Flagg, that may only be an option for 20 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I mean, he's, his how's the game going to be called, right? That's a big thing too. But I think that Duke will need Cooper to be able to create for himself and others late in the clock. It is helpful, obviously, to be able to spread the floor with shooters and have this vertical spacing lob threat in Malawach. It really, really limits your ability to send help at Cooper. And so it's just about him creating space, creating separation, and either knocking down shots or hitting an open guy.
All right, so last question before we go.
Yeah.
Give me a prediction, man. How do you think this game turns out? What's the result?
Oh, I don't, come on.
I have to ask everyone this question.
My predictions, could be jinxes. How about it'll be a close game? How about that?
Okay, that works.
Can we leave it at that? I don't expect another blowout. I expect a close game. Really out on a limb here, Jason. I'll answer anything except a prediction. I just can't go there.
All right. Well, in that case, then we're done. I want nothing more to do with you.
What's your prediction? You haven't even told me.
You're going to laugh at me. My prediction is that we haven't realized up until lately how really, really, really good this Duke team is. And it will take an off game from Cooper Flagg, like he had against Alabama, for Houston to really be close. If Cooper struggles a little bit, if Duke's not getting a lot on offense, then this is a close game. Because the Duke defense, Houston's not going to score like it. The game must be in the 60s for Houston to win. Houston doesn't win this. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. And look, I think we do know how good. We've been talking for a while. This team has done some historically great things. Look, I think we were both concerned before the Alabama game because of how good they looked. And if you're a Duke fan, certainly that should give you confidence with how relatively easy they dispatched Alabama. Look, that was a 7-point game at one point midway through the second half. And
it went between 7 and 11 for like most of the second half.
Right. That run where they held Alabama scoreless.
The 20-point margin is
a little deceiving.
Yeah.
But Duke also controlled that game. Let's be fair.
Yep.
And actually probably should have been up more at halftime. So I think that should be like, okay, even against, because Alabama is one of those top 6 teams we talked about all year. And even against those teams, this team just looked like another level. So I think that's what should give people the most confidence, whether they're playing Houston or if they should be fortunate enough to get by at Auburn or Florida.
Yeah. Again, my prediction would be Duke by double digits. I think it'll be close for a long time. But the thing I just seen again and again and again and again this season is, it's a reasonably close game. And then suddenly like, oh, wait, the opponent just went 6 minutes without scoring. Yeah, Duke just shut them down for 6 minutes. At the same time, Duke hit 3 3-pointers during that span and had 2 lobs to Malawach. And suddenly this 8-point game has turned into a 20-point game, and no one's coming back on Duke at that point. So
can I ask you a question before we go?
Sure, of course.
How much do you think, if anything, last year's game against Houston matters?
I've heard some people talk about this as Jay Billis. We had Jay on the other day, and Jay said, oh, it's an extra motivator for Houston. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I don't know that it matters that much once you start playing. And the reality is, other than Tyrese Proctor, there's no one on this. Caleb Foster was on the team, but he didn't even play in that game. Other than Tyrese Proctor, there's no one on this Duke team that feels any perspective or any we remember when we beat them. They don't know. No, they may have watched the game, but none of them remember it at all because they weren't involved in it. And I don't think Houston. I'm sure Houston feels that they were robbed. I think it's very legitimate to feel if Jamal Shed doesn't get hurt, we're winning that game and we're making the Final Four last year. And maybe I don't know that you're beating UConn, but if you're Houston, you feel like you have a shot. They probably had as good a shot as anybody in the country of beating UConn last year. So,
yeah.
But once the ball's tossed, I just don't know that it means that much, and I don't think it means anything to Duke, who is the better. Duke is the better team. I don't think it means anything to the better team because they don't have any perspective on it.
What I generally agree. I don't think this extra motivation situation is a thing at this level at the Final Four. Who isn't motivated to go win a national championship?
Yeah. Regular season game, maybe there's some of that, but not. Yeah.
What I recall from that game is even without Jamal Shed, how much difficulty Duke had running offense against. Now, you're playing with Mark Mitchell at the 4 instead of Cooper Flagg. It's a slight difference, obviously. But just the physicality of Houston. Look, it's going to be a challenge. Duke has obviously big perimeter guys, but still they're going to be every cut, every pick and roll. There's going to be contact, and they're going to have to play through that contact. The second thing I remember very vividly was that Tyrese Proctor's defense was elite in that game, and I think it's going to be even more pronounced this year because he's just a much better player. The one thing we didn't talk about, by the way, and the one thing you probably should be most concerned about as a Duke fan is offensive rebounding. We've seen it crop up as a problem in multiple games late in the season, and it could very well be that Houston's just looking to get a ball up on the glass and then go after it after. So Duke's going to have to be even better on the defensive glass than they've been lately. They were pretty good against Alabama. The numbers against Alabama, I think, had a 23% offensive rebound rate, which is very good. I actually thought Arizona had even more offensive rebounds in real time, but 34% allowed is still pretty concerning. And obviously Baylor offensive rebounded very well too. So,
and Tugler and Roberts, that's a lot of what they do. Tugler especially.
Well, this is Houston.
This
is what they do every year. And it's just built in their DNA. 11th in the country at 37%. I mean, that's going to be. There's nothing more discouraging than a great defensive possession where you can't get the rebound, and there's no better cheat code to overcome bad offense than getting your own rebound and putting it back in.
All right, now you're scaring me.
It's what I do.
All right, we're going to wrap it up there. Man, so much content coming at you folks. Thanks for joining us. He is Jordan. He is Donald. I am Jason. Here's the Duke Band. They're playing us out and taking us home.